lot better. So the Philadelphia Baptist Association was formed on the 27th day of the 7th month, on the 7th day of the week. Now, if I was a Ruckmanite, I'd say, see, it's re-inspired, amen? You have all those similarities there. That means it. Anyway. You have heard the reasoning. Like, the King James had to be re-inspired. One of the reasons is because when you go to the book of Romans, it's the 6th book of the New Testament, and it has 6 letters in it. And the word man is in it, which is 6 is the number of man, right? And then if you go to the 6th chapter of the 6th book, the 6th verse, the 6th word is man. Okay? Show me that in any other book on the planet. See, it's re-inspired. See that?
Amen. Amen.
Of course, if you don't know I'm jesting by now, you've got issues. But the Philadelphia Baptist Association, again, 27th day, 7th month, 7th day. In 1707, this association began. The meeting lasted till the 3rd day of the week following before the formation of the association. The churches had a general meeting for preaching and administering the ordinances, which was held in different places. The first was held at Salem, 1688. This was about 3 months after the Lower Dublin Church was constituted. The next was held at the latter church, the next at Philadelphia, and the fourth at Burlington. Others are held in various places. The people with whom the brethren met called the gathering a yearly meeting because it was met with them but once a year. But those who attended all the sessions of this body spake of it as a quarterly meeting. The association was designed to differ from the yearly meeting, chiefly in this, and that it was to be a body of delegates representing churches, and the yearly meeting had no representative character. So, for those of you who think this was just a very, very loosely affiliated association, it wasn't, as you can tell right now. So like on the Baptist Heritage Revival Society website, we say we are just a kind of a scattering of loosely affiliated Baptists. We actually mean that, amen? This was an association, and it was meant to have a continuity of doctrine, and you'll notice seemingly they were taking the Lord's table together, all right? And, I'm not going to fuss with you fellas, but if you want to believe what you want to believe, I mean, I'd fight and die for you to believe what you want to believe. My personal opinion is how you practice the table is a declaration of what you believe about the universal church versus the local church. Because I don't believe God ever gave an overseer of one congregation of one location, which is what the definition of the church, gave him jurisdiction over other people's members in any way or shape or form. And that's something that needs to be kept under the authority and auspices and umbrella of every local pastor. But they were doing it together. So we call this open communion, okay? And but anyway, the brethren who constituted the association came from Lower Dublin, okay, that's Pennapack, Middletown, we'll be there, we'll be in both those places, Piscataway, Cohansey, and Welsh Track. And the only one we're going to miss on this tour is Piscataway, because we just can't hit everything, and some is pretty far away. Piscataway's kind of up by New York City. We just can't go up that far in New Jersey, or it's going to be a never-ending. We'll never get to where we need to be. Okay, so we're gonna hit a lot of the Philadelphia Association churches. The Philadelphia congregation, though giving its name to the association, is not represented as a constituent member because it was regarded as a branch of the Lower Dublin Church. Morgan Edwards mentions with evident satisfaction that though the association was formed of but 5 churches, it had so increased since as to contain 34 churches in 1770, exclusive of those who have been detached to form another association. 1789, the association had 81 churches with a membership of nearly 24,000. The influence of the Philadelphia Association has been greater in shaping Baptist modes of thinking and working than any other body in existence. So like it or not, this is why this is important. The influence of the Baptist Association had been greater in shaping Baptist modes of thinking and working. It's older by nearly 50 years than any other association. Its confession of faith and treatise of discipline have wielded an immense power in favor of orthodoxy and piety among our rising churches. So what's interesting is a seeming laxness, more than seeming, on the ordinances in one way, and yet complete strength on the ordinances and things like mode and things of that nature, and even authority, and in reference to baptism. And then very, very strong on discipline, and yet weak in other areas, okay? So in that sense, they're not unlike any other Baptist church that's ever existed, right? It has ever been the warm friend of missions at home and abroad. Its ministers making missionary tours all over the country. It has always been the friend of Sunday schools since what our denomination would have been in the country without the Philadelphia Association is an interesting question. And so we're going to actually, instead of reading more of what others have said about it, we're going to look at the character of it through its constituent churches and their influences. Now, understand this. We go to some of these churches, and this happens every tour. I get asked, why even visit this place if it's so bad today? Because we're here for two reasons, and we didn't realize the second one nearly as much at the beginning as we began to realize, as God showed us. That's why we were visiting these old churches. So the first reason is because we want to know the history of our people, okay, of the Baptists and our doctrine. But the second reason is because as you see them, you see where they were, you see where they are, God convinces you in your heart of something you could read on paper 1,000 times, you can hear somebody say it, but when you see it with your own eyes, it's like, wow, these churches all go bad. You realize why, and it's just reason 998 why we continue to birth New Testament churches, because they just don't last forever. Amen. Your brother Sargent brought that out as well. So that's what we're heading into. Amen. Now, what you're going to find is these were men of renown. Like all their doctrine, hate it if you will, you cannot deny how God used some of these men in amazing ways. Whenever I lecture on the Separate Baptist Revival, I always do about 20 or 30 minutes on, if I'm able to, on the Great Awakening. And Whitefield preached against the separates and their demand for order and scriptural baptism and things like that. And he said, "Oh, my chickens turned to ducks," which he angrily said, that the Dunkards are taking all my converts. What he meant by that, just to remind you that most of you know this, is chickens like a little bit of water. They'll stand through a puddle or they'll peck water and drink it that way, but ducks fully immerse. What he was saying was, these Baptists got their claws in my converts, and now they're pulling them into their churches away from my teachings, and they're submitting to scriptural baptism, which he had already thought that was good enough, because he even argued for infant baptism when he debated it, even later in his ministry. Believe it or not, Lumpkin records a lot of that for us, by the way. So, but here's the thing. When you see in history God himself reach out of heaven and grab a hold of two separate continents at one time and shake them to their heart of hearts, you can't deny that Whitefield was a saved man, and when he preached the gospel, you couldn't touch him. I mean, he had the power of God on him. He preached on the Boston Commons, and some of you were there when I said, "Wait here," and I walked up to the top of the Boston Commons and turned around, and just for a minute, thundered forth my voice down off the Boston Commons, and everybody thought we were crazy probably, but to illustrate, that's what Whitefield did when the population of Boston was, I think, around 15,000, and had 30,000 packed on the Commons, right, Brother Paul? This man knows Boston history, by the way. If you want to know anything about Boston Revolution in the Northeast, you talk to him. He is an expert on the stuff. And then the governor followed him. Was it about 30 miles out of town, begging him to come back and preach more, because what all the goodwill and all the wimpy preaching up there at that particular time in that region couldn't do, the power of God was doing through Whitefield. All right. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look at men, and we're going to look at, man, they were used in the Revolution, they're used in this way, they're used as historians, they're used in other ways. And so it's not at all a full endorsement, but we do want to recognize their contributions. And then especially when we get to Carpenter's Hall, it's just amazing, the efforts that we see there, and it's just going to be glorious when you find all this stuff out. But I hope that you enjoy it. I hope that you can put aside, some of the things you do know. By the way, if you look at my bookshelf, you'd probably think I was a heretic, because I read widely, because I preach and debate and help in a defensive fashion, and you have to know the other side and be able to refute it. And I wouldn't recommend that to a young preacher boy, but all of us do that. We all have to discern and put our filters on everything we read. So I'm not saying that, what all that they did was good. Just know that. But they did a lot of amazing things.